Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another session of our Fun with Food and Farming series, a collaboration between Brescia University College, Agscape, and 4-H. My name is Christine, and I'm a master's student in the Food and Nutrition program at Brescia University College in London, Ontario. Today, I have with me Bob Wilson, and he is a beef farmer who operates a mixed operation farm with his family where they grow field crops and raise cattle. As we learn about farming today with Bob, please feel free to pop your questions and comments into the chat, and we'll take a little bit of time at the end to answer your questions. So welcome, Bob, and thank you for joining us today. Would you mind by starting off and telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into farming?
And I'd love to look at you guys, but I'm not sure whether that's frightening or not. And because I can't see the screen, so you're just going to get the other background in picture. So I'm Bob Wilson, and welcome to our farm, Gilbrea Farm. We're in Wellington County. We farm a little bit of cash cropping, so we grow some crops in rotation in fields. So one year a field will be corn, the next year it will be soybeans, and the next year it will be grain. And then also part of our operation is that we have beef cows, so cows that are used to produce beef, and they give us a calf every year. And so we'll go and have a look at the beef cows and calves pretty soon. I guess I got started farming. My dad, instead of buying a cottage like most normal people, my dad bought a recreational farm, and when I was about 10 years old. And so I just got fascinated by agriculture and decided I'd go to university for agriculture. And partway through, somewhere when I was a kid, we ended up selling the one farm and buying another one that was a little closer to Toronto. And so we've been here for about 46 years, which is a long time. And I'm a little older than that. And we've had beef cows on the farm since about 1990, so just a little over 30 years.
Very neat. And I understand that you farm with your family.
I do. So you guys could pop up a picture there. So that's me and my wife, Lynn, and my daughter, Katie. And the three of us work this farm. I do a lot of the machinery work. My daughter, Katie, does an awful lot of, there's a lot of record keeping with these particular cows. And she also does a lot of work with the cows. And my wife, Lynn, looks after a lot of the farm paperwork and record keeping.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to look at a little bit of really neat drone footage that your nephew recorded.
Can you hold that for just a second?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
While you guys are showing the drone footage, I'm going to move around on the farm. But what I want to show you guys first, because we can talk about this a little bit later, is some of the stuff that we use here on the farm. So this blue thing here with these black doors on it is a water trough for the cows. And they learn to push the door down, and then they have water. And so this thing's here because this won't freeze in the winter. They always have fresh water. And then we move over here, and this other blue thing is a thing called a mineral feeder. Now, it's broken, and it's missing a lid. There's a big rubber lid that goes on it. But we try and keep salt. This is the salt. And then we keep some mineral in. And the cows will come if they think they need this stuff. It's like you guys taking vitamin pills in the morning. These cows will come and lick away at this when they think they need it. So I just wanted to show you those because now you're going to put that video up, and I'll do my best to talk to it while I walk to some other places here on the farm.
Very cool. Thank you for pausing to show those to us. So we did slow this down a little bit. So if we don't mind putting up that footage now, we'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay, so that's driving down the road in front of our farm, and now you're turning into our farm laneway. And this farm has been farmed since 1883, but not by us. Sorry, 1833. So we're about the fifth owners of it. And there's a big old barn, and then there's the stone house. That stone house was built in 1889, and that's the house my dad lives in. And there's a picture of some of the buildings on the farm. Those are used for storing machinery, not cows. And then behind them are some pastures. Those are pretty small areas, so they're only for holding small numbers of animals. We're looking at those same pastures now. You can see a bull in there, and you can see the really short grass, and beside that's tall grass. So we let them eat one area, and then we move them to the next area, and that's called rotational grazing. So we do that on the whole farm, but that's a really good illustration. And then you can see there were some feeders there. See those two structures? And then off, can you back that up or not? No, don't worry about it. There's a row, yeah, let's go there. Yep, sorry. So again, that's the rotational grazing, and there's some green feeders that we can put hay into. You'll see some of that later today. And then the white line in there is where we store our bales. And then there's some little shelters. And so that shows not everything you see is our farm, but it does show our farm, and I can't explain to you now. There are the buildings, the main buildings. So there's the house and then the old bank barn. That's good. And there, those white rows are some more stored feed. And then here are some more grazing cells. Some have been grazed and some haven't. And then you can see the group of cows in the one corner. And now you're seeing the old bank barn. That's what they call it. And then there's a new addition on the end. And that's where we keep the cows for part of the year. We'll see that picture a little later and talk a little bit more about it. And that's a group of cows out grazing. They're happy. And cows are kind of like couch potatoes. They don't move around a lot. And there's a baby calf. That could be her mom lying there. And some more cows. And their water trough in the background, another one of those mineral feeders. That's good. Okay, and here we are back on the farm, and this is my niece. She helps on the farm too. And she's using a tractor that's called a loader tractor because it has that attachment on the front. And she's just finished moving some of these feeders around. So she relocated some of the feeders. So you can see where the feeder used to be. There's a cow chewing on that mound of what looks like, well, it is hay. And then she's going to go and get a couple bales and put them in. So we'll talk about some other stuff. This black thing over here is a feeder, and it's got a special device on the other side that allows only the baby calves to go in and eat the feed. So the baby calves can get a little bit of extra feed by using this thing. So you'll see there's a calf in there, and they're going to run away as soon as I get close, probably. And you can see, you'll be able to see him leave. But you see that gate is so narrow that only the babies will fit, not the moms. And then if you look in here, it's pretty empty, but we did have oats in there. So there's just a few particles of oats in there that you can see. And the idea is that the calves can get a little bit of extra feed to help them grow, besides the milk that they get from their mom and the hay.
They need that extra nutrition.
Yep. So I don't know. So we actually, farming here is kind of a team effort. So there's the family involved. Again, my wife, my daughter, and now my niece. And also we use a lot of professionals. So one of our professionals is a veterinarian, and he helps us make sure our animals are really healthy. So we don't just use him for emergencies. We use him to plan our health program for the year. So our cows get vaccinated, just like everybody, for different things like the flu and some respiratory problems. They get that once a year, and then he also makes sure that they're pregnant, so he can check that to make sure they're pregnant. So it's sort of like women going and getting an ultrasound. The vet will come and do an ultrasound on my cows to see if they're pregnant or not. So we work with a vet. We also work with a nutritionist. And the nutritionist comes out after we've harvested all of our feed for the year. So we grow feed on our land, and then we harvest it and store it on the farm. And he comes and he takes samples of it, and then he tests it, and then he helps us balance a ration or nutritional program for our cows so we feed them properly. And you can tell by looking at the cows, so we're doing a pretty good job. They're not skinny bone racks, and their coats are glossy, and they're happy eating. I can't always get close to them. Some of them will run away from me, but but they are a pretty healthy, contented bunch of cows.
That's fantastic. So I see all your cows are brown. Do you get milk from these cows? Is this a special type of cow?
So they're not all brown. Some are black and some are, we call the brown ones red, actually.
Okay.
So I've got black cows and red cows. And these cows are for production of beef, like hamburgers and stuff like that. The cows eventually get turned into hamburger, but it's later on, all of these animals will become beef. But for me, these cows are here to have babies. So they have babies once a year, and then these babies grow up. And so you're seeing the smaller calves, and most of these calves are about 6 months old. They were born in last August and September. And when they're born, they weigh somewhere around 75 pounds. So I think that's about 30 some kilograms, right? And then they get up and they get sucking on their mom. I don't see anybody who is doing that right now. And they grow. So they drink the milk from the mom. And then once they get a little bigger, like you see this guy here, he's chewing on some hay too along. So yeah, these calves are for the production of meat.
Good to know. Okay, so we do have a couple questions that came in. So let's take a first look here. So hi, how many cows do you have?
So that's a good question. We have about 100 cows on this farm. And that's kind of what we maintain as our herd size. So sometimes when cows get old, we have to sell them, but we always have some new young ones that we will keep to become cows. So we keep the female calves some of them to become cows. And so there's about 100 cows here and pretty close to 100 calves as well.
Wow, that's quite a few.
It is. It's a lot to look after.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question from Miss D's class. How or are the cows dangerous?
Well, kind of do they look dangerous? I know that's kind of a smart reply. So that depends. You should never, ever go up to some farmer's field and just walk in to visit with the cows because some cows can be dangerous. But we try really hard to only keep the cows that are nice. So we are very quiet when we walk around them and work around them. And so we make sure that these cows are well behaved, or we call that their disposition. And we're looking for animals that have a really kind disposition. But there are guys out there who don't spend much time around their cows because they don't need to. Cows don't need a lot of attention. And those cows may not be quite as happy around people as ours are.
Mm-hmm. Good to know. So Jordan asks, how can you tell an unhappy and a happy cow apart?
Well, so an unhappy cow is probably only unhappy because she's sick in some way, shape, or form. So she might have an upset tummy, or she might have a sore foot. So if they've got a sore foot, when they're walking, they kind of limp a little bit. And so what we'll do is we'll take them down to our barn because we've got a place there where we can get close to them and look at them and see what's wrong. And sometimes when they've got an upset stomach, it's just kind of how they stand. They stand, so that red cow there, I'll try and get close to her. She's really happy. She's standing there kind of chilling, not paying much attention to anything. She's chewing her cud, and she's pretty happy. A cow who's not so happy, their head will be drooped a little bit. Their ears will be down. It's a skill that you develop looking at them, right? You can tell healthy animals from unhealthy animals. It's part of the skill of being a farmer.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like they like to stay together and close and kind of herd together like that.
That's right. Cows are mostly a herd animal, so they like to stay in groups. Cows don't like to be off by themselves. Now, you'll see some cows in this picture that are kind of wandering around, but they really aren't all that far from the herd, just a few steps away. So they are herd animals, and they do like to stay in the herd. That's right.
Awesome. So, how much do cows eat?
That's a cool question. They eat 2% of their body weight per day, which is a lot. So a cow, one of my cows, will eat about 17 kilograms of hay every day. So you just imagine trying to sit down to a meal of 17 kilograms of hay.
Wow.
They drink a bit too. So a cow, when she's making milk for her baby, she's giving her baby liquid. Oh, there's a good picture of a calf nursing, but we're going to get that interrupted. You can kind of see straight ahead of me, there's a cow who's looking at me with her 2 tags, and then beside her is a calf. And that baby calf is sucking on her udder, so it's nursing. So it's getting milk out of that cow. And when they're nursing, they'll drink more than, let me do the math, more than about 50 liters of water every day is what that's. So these calves, because they're 6 months of age, are getting to the age where they should be separated from their moms. And that's a process we call weaning. So when we move the cows all to the barn, we'll put a funny little nose flap in the calf, and it's a little plastic one that has buttons. So you don't even have to punch a hole in their nose. You just put that in, and that flap will hang down across their mouth, and they can still eat all the food they want, but they can't actually, because of where the flap is, they can't actually suck on their moms, but they can still be beside them. And we leave that in for a week, and then we take that out, and then we separate the calf and the mom by a fence. And so they can still see each other, but that stops the calf from drinking from the mom. And that's called weaning. And we do that when they're about 6 months of age. So let's go here and we'll look at Michaela, my niece. You can see the cows are anxious to have some hay. So she's taking the wrap off the hay. You aren't going to be able to see that too well anymore. She's finished. So that's a bale of hay on the loader. And you can see the cows are anxious, so they come right over and start eating it already. And then she'll pick it up and drive ahead and drop it down into the feeder. Bang, right? And now the cows will come and they can eat that. Wow. And so about 15 cows can go around one of these hay feeders. So we have lots and lots of hay feeders out here. We always put a little bit more hay out. So you can see lots of those feeders still have hay in it. But we like to keep a little bit of hay here for them for all parts. And this is the big boy. He's the bull. So he's the one male in the whole, the one adult male. And he's just happy too. Other questions? Sorry.
So for the hay, do you do that one time a day, or do they get breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
So we only feed hay once a day. Some days we don't feed hay at all because there's so much left over from the day before in the feeders. So as long as there are bales of hay in the feeders, I'm just trying to see, oh, there's where Michaela's going. As long as there are bales of hay in the feeders, we don't have to add more hay to the field. So we have enough feeders here that we can sometimes put out enough hay to last for a couple of days. But the cows just help themselves. They just come and eat whenever they're hungry, sort of like people who snack all the time.
Very neat. And I think we had one more question right now. So Mercedes is asking, how often do you rotate the cows for grazing?
Oh, that's a really good question. So we don't do that at this time of the year because right now we have to feed the stored feed. So the cows actually graze the grass that's growing on the ground for the months of June, July, August, and part of September. And we have our pasture set up so that we move them about every 3 days from one compartment to another. So we've made the pasture areas or paddocks big enough that they can have enough feed in them for 3 days. Like all beef farmers are different, and everybody does stuff different. Some guys move their cows every day. Some guys move their cows a couple times a day. It's all kind of different, but yes, we do rotational grazing.
Very nice. Now, before we move on from feeding, you've mentioned the word hay a bunch of times. What's the difference between hay and straw? I hear these used together a lot.
Okay, so hay is what we feed the cow, and this stuff is hay. So hay is green plant material. It's a lot like your lawn grass because you plant it out in a field and it's good for a whole bunch of years. And I know this doesn't really look nice and green, but it's pretty green. and the cows like it. You can see that because they're coming up and eating it. So hay was harvested when the plant was still growing and green, and it's to feed the cows. Straw is material that is left over after you harvest a crop like wheat, so a grain crop. So wheat grows on a stalk, and all we want are the seeds off the top of the stalk. So the whole stalk that's left behind is dead and kind of a gold color, and it's called straw. And I don't have any in front of me. I should have thought of that. And we use straw for bedding. We call it bedding. So we spread the straw on the ground in the barn, and the cows lie down in it. So it makes a really nice, comfortable place for them to lie down. And we use the straw, we put straw in every day because cows aren't really tidy animals. And when they stand up after they've been lying down for a while, they have a big poop. And if they all stand up in the straw and poop, the straw gets covered in poop. So we have to put straw in every day.
Nice. Keep their living quarters nice and clean and cozy.
Yes, we want them to be clean and happy.
Excellent.
Other questions?
So do you give the cows names?
That's a good question also. We try not to. Mostly what we give them is numbers. So you see this cow here, number 159. She has an ear tag. It's a lot like you guys wearing earrings. And you can see that calf there has 159 in its tag. So that calf there is the baby of this cow here. So the cows all have numbers. And then when they have babies, we give the baby the same number as the mom. There's the odd cow in the herd that just gets so friendly that we will give it a name. But mostly it's just easier to give them numbers.
Nice. Thank you. So we've seen lots about where the cows eat. Where do they sleep?
They sleep out here. They sleep in the same field. They just lie down on the ground here like those guys up there. So those cows, while they're sitting there chewing their cud, they'll do the same thing all through the night. So cows do lie down when it's starting to get dark at night. They'll all find a nice place to lie down. And they have a nice thick coat, so they don't even mind lying down in the snow. But at this time of the year, most of the snow is gone. So we'll actually be moving these cows down to the barn pretty soon because you can see the ground's getting turned from looking like grass to getting pretty brown. So the ground's pretty solid right now, but in a few days it's going to be pretty mucky, and we don't want the cows messing it up any more than this. So we'll move them to the barn. But most of the time they just sleep out on the grass.
Very neat. So how long do the cows need to sleep? That's a great question.
Well, I've never spent a lot of time studying that, but it seems that they sleep a bit in the night and a bit in the middle of the afternoon in the summer when it's hot. I don't know if anybody's ever studied that, so I don't have a good answer, but I would think not much different than people.
Yeah, that was a really creative question. That came from Miss D's class again. They're really engaged today.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Good.
So another question from Jordan. Do cows ever get cold? Do they need to wear jackets or blankets like horses sometimes do in the winter?
Well, cows are kind of neat animals. They've got 4 stomachs, and one of those stomachs is a great big fermentation vat, and that can generate a lot of heat. So in the winter, we feed them extra food. We feed them stuff called corn silage, and that has a lot of energy in it. And so those cows, they can make enough heat to keep themselves warm. Plus, they grow a heavy winter coat. Now, these girls aren't going to let me get close enough, but you can see that animal there, kind of fluffy, and it's got a healthy, hairy coat. So they're not a whole lot different than squirrels and rabbits. And sometimes you'll see guys with newborn calves in the winter, they'll put coats on them. But we don't calve in the winter. We calve in the summer. So our calves are nice and warm and when they're little. And by the time winter rolls around, they're big enough to be able to stay outside in the cold.
Very neat. So you had mentioned earlier there's a special barn. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what this barn is used for?
Okay, so that's the barn where we take the cows at this time of the year, but we do other stuff there too. So you can see the big 2-story tall space. That was the original barn on this property. And to the best of our knowledge, that was built in about 1860. Then in about 1992, we put that lower addition on that has the 4 doors, the 2 tall ones and the 2 short ones. And so at this time of the year, we will take the cow herd down to the barn. So they're on pasture right now, and we've got some laneways and stuff. And we will chase them all down to the barn, and we will keep them on the concrete yard in the barn. And they'll be able to go into that big shed on the low spot, and they'll have straw in there to lie down on. And they'll be quite happy there until the grass has grown up enough for us to put them back out on the grass about the 1st of June. The other thing we have in there is we have a thing in there called a handling facility. And so it's like an alleyway with tall sides on it, because these cows aren't trained to be handled easily. They're not the same as a dog or a cat, and you sure can't grab the cow. And so we run them through into a thing called, it's a mechanical box, and it doesn't hurt them at all, but it makes sure they can't move around too much. So if we have to do something to the cow, like if she lost her ear tag, we have to put another ear tag in, or if she's sick, we have to give her a needle, we'll put her into our handling facility, and which is that alleyway and then the cage, and then we can put a needle in her, or we can treat her for different things. We can look at them more closely to see if there's something wrong with their feet, stuff like that. So that barn provides both shelter for the cows and an area for them. We feed them in that area, and it also provides us our handling facility.
Wonderful. Thank you. So how do you take care of the environment on your farm?
Well, so the environment's really important. If we don't have healthy soil, we won't grow good pasture. And if we don't grow good pasture, we can't have healthy cows. So we've taken a thing called an environmental farm plan. And that's a plan where you work through a workbook and you assess strengths and weaknesses of your property. And then you take that information away and you come up with a plan of what things to do. So on the farm here, sometimes if we do a soil test on a field and we find it's a little bit low in some of the nutrients, we will spread fertilizer on those fields. We do plant trees. We've planted trees on the farm. You can see the rows of the trees in the background, so that's really good. And there's a big tree plantation out front. And so we do all kinds of different things to make sure that we're looking after the land. Testing the soil and fertilizing. Rotational grazing is a good way. Cows are kind of neat because they graze. They're a combination of a grass harvester and a manure spreader. So as they work along grazing, they poop. And so they spread some manure around too, just by themselves.
That's great. It's kind of that mutual beneficial relationship there.
It is. Managing the grass with rotational grazing is a really great way to spread nutrients around.
That's awesome. So we have a couple more questions here we'll finish off with. I think we can probably do maybe 2 more questions.
Great. Yep.
So Miss D's class asks, how long do cows live?
Well, it's like people. Some of them live a long time and some of them don't. Sometimes some of our calves are actually born dead. We don't like that. The moms don't like that. And some other cows, they can live to be as old as 13 or 14 or 15 years old.
Excellent. So kind of the same as a lot of animals kind of that size. So interesting.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. Can I just, one more thing quickly?
Absolutely.
So one of the things we do for our cows is we put these up, and they don't look like they're very much protection. They're called windbreaks. And we can just hitch the tractor on and drag them around and put them wherever you want. But you can see there's a big pile of snow here, and that's because of the windbreaks. They slow the wind down, and when the wind slows down, the snow drops out of it. So this is an area in here that's really nicely sheltered. So on a really windy day, the cow herd will gather down here and be sheltered from the wind.
That's fantastic.
And you had another question or two?
Yeah, we'll do one last question. So Mercedes asks, how does a cow's moo have different meanings? Good question.
Yes, they do. But I don't know what they are. A cow will sound different when she's calling her calf to come and have a drink of milk. So the cow's udder, like the milk production's all day long. And at some point, the pressure in the udder gets high enough that the cow wants the calf to suck on it and relieve the pressure. So they just do a kind of a little soft moo, and I'm not very good at imitating it. And then when calves are first born, some cows really bawl at them. And the theory behind that is, so bawling is really loud mooing, bellowing continuously. And they'll do that so the calf recognizes the mom's voice. And when they're hungry, the whole herd will start bawling or bellowing or mooing really loud, because it's like they're saying, well, hurry up and come and feed me. So some of those you can tell. I also have one thing I need to show you. This is our another partner in the farming business. This is our little farm dog. She doesn't do any good handling cattle, but she keeps me company.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. So thank you, Bob, for sharing what it means to be a farmer on a mixed operations farm and teaching us all about your cattle. Thank you to the students and teachers who joined us today. I hope you all learned something new. Don't forget about the activity kit, where you can find some really fun activities to complement today's session. And if you have a moment, please consider filling out the short survey found on page 3 of the kit. So your feedback will help us develop more programming that you'd like to see in the future. Our last speaker, Leah, will have a live interview this afternoon at 2 p.m. Leah is a registered dietitian who will be talking about local foods. Or if you missed any of the sessions, recorded versions are available on Agscape's YouTube channel. But before I go, I have one final question for you, Bob.
Sure.
What do you call a happy farmer?
If this is a riddle, I don't know. What do you call a happy farmer?
A jolly rancher.
Sorry, a what?
A jolly rancher.
Okay.
Jolly rancher. All right. Well, with that, bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So do you guys, do I leave now?